I think it would be wise to put some kind of sheet together that gets information about the seller. Where the lead came in. Well, the lead came in from my real estate agent driving around and they saw neglect on this house or neglect on this duplex. Or they saw this house that's vacant. They did a little research and found out it's not in foreclosure, but it's vacant. They haven't put it on the market for sale yet, but the owners have moved to another part of the country because of their job. Okay? Seller's name, all the information there, property address, notes. You know, be organized when you're going to the seller and you're talking to them so that you can take this information and really apply the most accurate solution to their problem. Remember, there's 5 types of subject to. No money, money up front and in the end, that type of thing. All right? Handle the call professionally, you know that. Ask open-ended questions. Begin completing the seller information sheet. Determine if the seller is open to creative offers. Number 2, would discount for cash, especially when you're buying that equity, is not worth more time. One of my best moves in real estate is determining when I don't want to spend more time on that. I've done this a lot with respect to offers. You make an offer, they say no. You make another offer, you say no. You work the numbers, this is my top end, and it doesn't work. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Move on. Time always makes the seller more motivated. If it doesn't work now, wait 6 weeks, because it's 6 weeks of more bills coming in, 6 weeks of a problem unsolved. That seller will get more motivated with time. Just like when I bought that 90 unit, and I told you that story about it, I came back 10 weeks later and we were able to cut a deal because their motivation factor went up. This is a great question to ask in a subject to property. Would you sell your house for what you owe? Would you sell your house for what you owe? Now, obviously, that question would not be asked if you're in a market in which the mortgage is much higher than the home value, because you're going to get a lot of people saying yes to that. Bless you, Gilbert. But when you're in an emerging market, like in Atlanta, Charlotte, Chicago, Kansas City, some of those, I think this is a very good question to ask. If I can, check this out, make sure you write this part down. If I can get you the same amount of money that you would walk away with after you listed, marketed, and sold your home through a realtor, would you be open to that type of offer? If I can get you the same amount of money that you would walk away with after you listed, marketed, and sold your home through a realtor, would you be open to that type of offer? Great question to ask. So in your mind, in your target market, I would be walking through those steps. Let's see, in my target market, my houses are $80,000. They probably have a mortgage somewhere between, I would say, $85,000 or $90,000, depending on how far down the market went. So I'm starting to add up the figures. If there's a mortgage on it for $70,000 and we're selling the house at $80,000 in a traditional sale, 6% of $80,000 is $4,800. $70,000 plus $4,800 is almost $75,000. They're going to have closing costs. They may leave the closing table with $3,000. Do you see what I just did? Do you see that? You didn't? You want me to do it again? You want me to write it down? Really? Okay, I'll do it. You want me to write that down? Easier to say it? I'll write it down. I'm doing this for you, Val. I'm just letting you know. She's one of my favorites. What can I say? So, in my target market, my houses are around the $80,000 mark, okay? Let's say that we've got an $80,000 house that has a $70,000 mortgage on it. Okay? And the seller, the owner, just lost their job. Wow, sorry about that. And now that the owner lost their job, they want to sell the house. Or they're going to have to do something because they don't have the income to stay there. So, by putting this house on the market, the realtor is going to come in and list it for 6%. 6% of 80,000 is 4,800, correct? No?
4,200. 7.6, 42.
What did I say, 42? It's 48, right? Yeah. What are you guys doing to me here? Hey, I got the math, okay? I got the math. You and your fancy calculator there. So 4,800 bucks. Everybody sees this, right? So really, altogether, we've got about $75,000 that we're going to have to deal with if our house sells at 80. If we've listed it at 80, it's probably not going to come in at 80. It's probably going to come in at 75. Do you see the problems we're running into? Even though the mortgage was less than the value. So if you went to that owner and said, hey, if I cut you a check at $3,000 at closing, and I took your property subject to, would that be okay? They may not understand. You may have to walk them through, well, here's the deal. If you list your house at 80, you're probably not going to get an offer at 80. You're probably going to get an offer at 75. And you're probably going to have 2 months of that mortgage payment that you got to make. So you're going to have that cost as well, the holding costs. And then the mortgages, you're going to have that property sold at 6%, so you've got the real estate commission on top of that, and your closing costs. You're probably going to have to come to closing with some money to get out of this alive. What I'd like to do is buy your house from you at 80,000 bucks. I'll give you $3,000 at closing, and I'm going to take over your mortgage subject to. I'm going to have to explain that a little bit. At that point, I'm also going to explain something called the due on sale clause. Now, your bank, because there is a transfer of ownership, could actually say, hey, this mortgage is due right now, and that mortgage is going to have to be paid in full. But one of the ways that myself and my attorney mitigate that is we put your property in a trust. And I talk about the St. Germain Act of 1982 and all of this. Is this all kind of coming together a little bit for you here now? Okay. Okay. Yes, Valerie.
So you put the property in a trust, and when it said due on sale clause, it talked about transferring a property. Now, by transferring it into a trust, would that still put a flag? Because that's still a transfer?
Yes, and let me get to that point. That's a great question, Valerie. Very good. I'm going to get to that point here in a couple slides, I promise you. Okay? So, if we could accomplish your goals without cash, would you consider it? So in that example, you might start off, hey, if I can get you out of this scot-free, instead of bringing money to closing, and you're going to show them why that would probably happen, if I can get you out of here scot-free, we'll close within a week, 7 days. That's the other thing. You rid them of that problem in 7 days. Oh, here's the other thing that we're going to do. All the payments are going to be done through a loan servicing company, just like we set up with Steve and Stephanie. They're going to go through a loan servicing company so that you know that that mortgage payment is being made. I think that that gives security to that seller to know that this is being handled right. Okay? So if we could accomplish your goals without cash, would you consider it? Great question to ask. What's the least amount you would take if you got cash for your equity and I took over your payments? Another great question to ask with this. Great question to ask. I know people are taking pictures of this. Everybody got their pictures? Okay. So the goal is to gather information and to set an appointment with the seller at the house. That's what your goal is. And you're going to be asking these questions at the house. At the house. Everybody got it? Okay. So, this is your homework for today. Do it tonight, do it tomorrow, get back in your groups, like Oksana and Gary, you guys practice this at home, maybe over a glass of wine or vodka, right? Pierre and Louise, maybe you guys for the wine kind of thing. Okay, so here's a role play. Get into pairs. One person is the investor, the other person is the seller. Investor is calling on a FSBO ad. This is another great source of leads, by the way, FSBOs. Why are they selling for sale by owner? They don't want to pay the real estate commission. Why? Because they know they're tight on that deal. This is a, if you want, by the way, if you go to FSBO.com, FSBO.com, and you type in Atlanta, Georgia, you'll have all the FSBOs that pop up in Atlanta, Georgia. What a great list to start with your subject to technique. You've already got leads right there. You just need to work them. Right? Nicholas, that would be a great thing. Remember, this is, remember seller's info sheet. Have that out in front of you. And remember the pre-screening questions that we talked about. Seller is moving out of the area and has already purchased a new house there. Property is 85% leveraged, and seller knows that he or she will not net much after costs. This is why it's a FSBO in the first place. If you want a list of FSBOs, go to FSBO.com. Any state. Yes?
My question about FSBO.com is, I check it out. I have an account with them and I check it out quite regularly. I noticed that, like in my market, the houses are, I'm not going to say overpriced, but they're priced higher than what they should be, obviously, because they're trying to get some equity.
Right.
Is there any way you can find out if they're at a stage in their, I don't know, life where there's a problem? Like, for example, they're going to be foreclosed. Like, how would you get that?
Well, number one, I would check with the county to see if there's an NOD there, a notice of default. If there's yes, you know there's a problem. If there's not, they're selling at FSBO typically because there's not a lot of meat left on the bone. You don't care about that. You want the bone. They've got a problem to solve, and I think it's all in your approach. When you're asking these questions of, why are you selling? It could be as easy, because it's a FSBO, you've already got an account with them, you'll get their contact information, and when you get them on the phone, say, I've just bought 2 other properties in Atlanta, I'm a little short on funds, but I know there's a way I can give you a solution to your issue. You're looking to move out of town, I'd like to buy your house, I can do that, but I know that there's not a lot of equity left in the property, especially when we add real estate commissions, closing costs, things like that. But I've got a solution. Boom, boom, boom.
And I'm okay to call them even if they put that disclaimer where it says no agents, no this, no that.
Are you an agent?
No, I'm not. But
Okay. Are you this?
no, I'm not.
Are you that?
I'm not even that.
See? You're fine. You're qualified to call. Right? You're looking to buy their house.
You said it, so I'm going to go.
Right? You absolutely go for it. This is, for you guys got a perfect business right here, ready to go, a perfect person on the ground for that. Really. Get into pairs. One person is the investor, the other person is the seller. Investor is calling a FSBO ad. The seller is moving out of the area, like we just talked about, and has already purchased a new house there. Does that add pressure to them? Why? Because they have 2 mortgages instead of 1. Property is 85% leveraged, and the seller knows that he or she will not net much after costs. This is why it's a FSBO. Remember, start to practice that communication. Those questions that we talked about a few slides ago, you want to definitely bring those up. Visit the property, check it out, at least by afar. Google map it. You can go on Trulia or Zillow to see what the home value is on it, that type of thing, okay? So remember this process. You pre-screen the seller, that's what you're going to practice that between investor and seller. And you're going to ask those questions that we talked about in those previous slides. And you're going to look to set the second meeting on neutral ground. So if you've got somebody else working your market like a Jill, like Penny has, you're going to meet at a Starbucks, at a McDonald's, at something else. I want them, when they're signing the contracts, not to sign them at their house. There's too much emotion, too many distractions, stuff like that. I think it's better if you move that off site a little bit. So when you meet the seller at the property for the first time, be friendly and professional. Get the seller to talk about him or herself. Seek to understand the seller's true motivation. What is it really? Why are they selling that house or need to get out from under that mortgage or away from that house? Seek to understand what the seller wants. There's no way that you can come up with a solution to their problem if you don't know truly what they're looking for. Confirm the seller's willingness to consider creative solutions. Analyze the house, the value, any repairs that would need to be done, how it would rent out. Confirm that you want the property. You might get there and say, you know, this is really not something that I want. It's not going to give me my cash flow that I'm looking for on a rental basis. Or maybe there's too much rehab work. Set the appointment to meet the seller later or begin the offer process. That's when you're going to say, listen, I think I can provide a solution to your challenge. I'd like to meet you at the end of the week. Let's meet at Starbucks. It's a little bit more convenient to me. And I'm going to bring you a contract to buy your house. That's kind of how you want to leave that. Questions with this right here? We're good? Everybody's caught up?